Growing up, people always said I was beautiful. They'd comment on my glowing skin, my hourglass figure, and the way I seemed to carry myself with confidence. "Queen," they'd say, "you're every man's dream." But I didn't feel like a dream. I felt trapped in a reality where people only saw my body, not my soul. I didn't ask for this shape or the constant attention it brought. Sure, I was grateful for my health and the way God made me, but sometimes I wished I could blend in, just be another face in the crowd. But no, wherever I went, eyes followed me. Whispers trailed me, and compliments, unsolicited, often empty, became the soundtrack of my life. You might think having a lovely shape would make finding love easy. For me, it made it almost impossible. It started in high school. Boys would line up to carry my books, offer to walk me home, or ask me to prom. At first, I was flattered. Who wouldn't be? But as I got to know them, I realized their interest wasn't in who I was, but in what I looked like. They didn't care that I loved reading poetry or that I dreamed of becoming a teacher. To them, I was just Queen, the girl with curves. My first boyfriend, Samuel, was one of those boys. He was charming, funny, and the star of the basketball team. At first, he made me feel special. But soon, I realized that he treated me like a prize, not a partner. He'd brag to his friends about dating me, but when it came to meaningful conversations or understanding my dreams, he wasn't interested. When he cheated on me, I wasn't surprised. Hurt, yes, but not surprised. It was my first heartbreak, but it wouldn't be my last. By the time I was in my 20s, I'd been through a string of relationships, each more disappointing than the last. There was Daniel, who acted like he adored me but constantly tried to control what I wore and where I went. "I don't want other men looking at you," he'd say. Then there was Peter, who seemed perfect, until I realized he was only interested in the physical aspects of our relationship. Anytime I tried to talk about my feelings or share my fears, he'd change the subject. With each failed relationship, I felt a piece of myself breaking. I began to wonder if true love even existed. Maybe the kind of love my parents had was a fairy tale, not something real people could experience. People often told me, "Queen, you're too picky. Just give someone a chance." But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't looking for perfection. I wasn't waiting for a man with a six-figure salary or a mansion. I was searching for someone who saw me, Queen, the woman behind the curves. On nights when loneliness crept in, I'd sit by my bedroom window, staring at the stars. I'd ask myself, what's wrong with me? Why does no one stay? The world saw me as desirable, yet I felt unwanted in the ways that truly mattered. One evening, as I sat at a cafe sipping coffee, I noticed a man staring at me from across the room. His gaze was steady but not intrusive, and when our eyes met, he smiled, a warm, confident smile that made me look away instinctively. A few moments later, he was standing by my table. "Hi," he said, his voice smooth like honey. "I couldn't help but notice you. Do you mind if I sit here?" I hesitated for a moment before nodding. He introduced himself as Richard. He was tall, with sharp features, a charming demeanor, and an ease about him that made me feel both curious and cautious. "Queen," I said, shaking his hand. "Fitting name," he replied, his eyes sparkling. "You look like royalty." I rolled my eyes playfully. "Is that your go-to line?" He laughed, disarming me with his honesty. "Maybe, but it feels genuine right now." We talked for hours. Richard was funny, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in me. He asked about my dreams, my favorite books, and my thoughts on life. For the first time in a long while, I felt like someone was seeing me, not just my shape, but my soul. Richard and I started seeing each other regularly. He was the kind of man who knew how to make a woman feel special. He'd send me good morning texts, surprise me with flowers, and plan thoughtful dates. "You're different," he'd say often, his gaze lingering on me as if I were a mystery he was desperate to solve. "You're not like anyone I've ever met." I started to let my guard down, thinking maybe, just maybe, Richard was the one. He seemed so genuine, so invested in understanding the real me. But something about him didn't sit entirely right. He always seemed to know the right thing to say, the perfect way to make me feel seen. It was almost too perfect, like a script he had memorized. One evening, Richard and I were out at a bar with some of his friends. They seemed nice enough, but there was a moment when one of them leaned over to Richard and said something that made him tense up. "Nyash lover strikes again, huh?" the friend teased, laughing. I frowned. "Nyash lover? What's that all about?" Richard's face flushed. "Oh, it's just a stupid nickname from college," he said quickly. "Nothing important." His response was too quick, too dismissive. The way his friends exchanged knowing glances didn't help either. "Why would they call you that?" I pressed, my curiosity piqued. "It's just a joke," he said, brushing it off. "Let's not ruin the night with silly stories." I let it go for the moment, but the name stuck with me. Over the next few weeks, little things started to feel off. Richard was still attentive, but I noticed how often his compliments circled back to my body. "You're so gorgeous, Queen. That dress hugs you perfectly," he'd say, or, "I can't get over how amazing you look." At first, I'd blushed at his words, but now they felt calculated. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post from a mutual acquaintance, a group picture from a party I hadn't attended. There was Richard standing with his arm around another woman. The caption read, "Nyash lover strikes again." My stomach churned. I decided to dig deeper. It didn't take long for me to find out what Nyash lover meant. Apparently, Richard had a reputation for pursuing women with curvy figures. He was infamous among his friends and acquaintances for chasing after them, charming them, and then moving on to the next. I felt sick. All those sweet words, all those thoughtful gestures, they weren't for me. They were for my body. I was just another name on his list, another conquest to be bragged about. I confronted him the next day. "Richard," I said, my voice trembling with anger and heartbreak. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" He frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I know about your nickname," I snapped. "Nyash lover. I know about your reputation." His face fell, and for a moment, he looked genuinely ashamed. "Queen, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I challenged, crossing my arms. "Because from where I stand, it looks like you've been playing me this whole time." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, yes. I used to be that guy. I had a reputation, and I won't deny it. But it's different with you, Queen. I'm not that person anymore." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that I was the one who could change him, that his feelings for me were real. But deep down, I knew better. "Richard," I said, tears streaming down my face, "I can't do this. I've spent my whole life being seen as just a body, just a shape. I thought you were different. I wanted you to be different." He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "Queen, please. I care about you." "No," I said firmly. "You care about what I look like. And I deserve more than that." Walking away from Richard was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. I'd let myself believe in him, in us, and now I had to start over. But as painful as it was, I knew I'd made the right choice. True love wasn't about charm or sweet words. It was about being seen for who I was, not just what I looked like. After walking away from Richard, I promised myself I would take a break from dating. My heart was tired, and I needed time to focus on myself. For weeks, I immersed myself in work, spent time with friends, and rediscovered hobbies I had long abandoned. But the loneliness lingered, creeping in during quiet evenings and long weekends. One night, out of curiosity and boredom, I decided to try something new. I downloaded a dating app. At first, it felt ridiculous, swiping through profiles, reading cheesy bios, and dodging questionable messages. But it was also oddly freeing. I could take my time, talk to people on my own terms, and be as cautious as I wanted. A few days in, I matched with someone named Liam. His profile picture showed a clean-shaven man with sandy blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a warm, easygoing smile. His bio read, "Just a simple guy who loves music, traveling, and good conversations. Looking for something real." I hesitated before sending him a message. He wasn't the type of guy I usually went for, not that I really had a type anymore. But there was something about him that intrigued me. "Hi, Liam," I typed. "What's your favorite place you've traveled to?" It didn't take long for him to reply. "Hi, Queen." Tough question. "Probably Italy. The food, the people, the history, it's magical. What about you?" Our conversation flowed effortlessly. He was funny, kind, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We talked about everything: our favorite books, childhood dreams, and the little things that made us happy. For the first time in a long while, I felt a connection that had nothing to do with how I looked. After weeks of talking online, Liam asked if I'd like to meet in person. "Only if you're okay with it," he added. No pressure at all. I thought about it. Meeting someone from a dating app felt risky, but Liam didn't give off any red flags. In fact, he had been nothing but respectful and patient. "Okay," I replied, my heart racing. "Let's do it." We decided to meet at a quiet park cafe on a Saturday afternoon. As I walked up to the meeting spot, I saw him sitting at a table under a large oak tree, his head bent over a book. He looked up as I approached, and his smile was even more radiant in person. "Queen," he said, standing to greet me. "You look amazing." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement. Our conversation was just as easy in person as it had been online. Liam was attentive, asking me about my day and laughing at my jokes. He didn't seem preoccupied with how I looked or try to steer the conversation towards superficial topics. "Can I ask you something?" he said after we had finished our coffee. "Of course. What made you join the app?" I hesitated, unsure of how much to share. But something about Liam made me feel safe. "I've had a hard time with relationships," I admitted. "I feel like people often see me for my appearance and not who I am." Liam nodded thoughtfully. "I get that. People can be shallow, and it's exhausting. But for what it's worth, I think you're incredible inside and out." As Liam and I spent more time together, I realized how different he was from anyone I had dated before. He wasn't flashy or overly charming. Instead, he was steady, genuine, and kind. He didn't shy away from talking about emotions or asking deep questions. He wanted to know what made me laugh, what kept me up at night, and what my biggest dreams were. One evening, as we sat on a park bench watching the sunset, Liam turned to me. "Queen, can I tell you something?" he said, his voice soft. "Of course. I've never met anyone like you. You're strong, intelligent, and kind. I feel lucky just to know you." Tears welled up in my eyes. For the first time in my life, I felt truly seen, not as a body, not as a shape, but as a person. Being with Liam wasn't always perfect. We had our misunderstandings and differences, but what mattered was how we handled them. Liam always listened, always tried to understand my perspective, and never made me feel like I was too much or not enough. With him, I learned that love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It was about the quiet, steady presence of someone who cared deeply and consistently. One evening, as we sat together in the glow of candlelight, Liam took my hand. "I know we've only been together for a few months," he said, "but I want you to know I'm all in. I see a future with you, Queen." For the first time, I felt like I could believe those words. And as I looked into his eyes, I realized that I didn't need to search for love anymore. I had found it in a way I never expected, with someone who saw me for exactly who I was. A year into our relationship, Liam and I were stronger than ever. He became my safe place, my partner in everything. With him, I didn't have to pretend or hide any part of myself. I had learned to trust again, to hope again, and most importantly, to love without fear. One crisp autumn evening, Liam invited me to dinner at a small restaurant by the lake. It was a quiet, intimate place we'd visited on one of our first dates. I thought nothing of it. Liam often surprised me with sweet gestures. We ate, laughed, and reminisced about our journey together. The glow of the setting sun reflected on the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As the meal ended, Liam reached across the table and held my hands in his. "Queen," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've shown me what real love looks like, patient, kind, and unwavering. I can't imagine spending another day without you by my side." Before I could respond, he stood, pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and knelt before me. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his blue eyes shining with love and hope. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I nodded, unable to find my voice. "Yes," I whispered, finally managing to speak. 1,000 times yes. The restaurant erupted in applause, and the staff brought out champagne to celebrate. I couldn't stop smiling, my heart swelling with joy. For the first time in my life, I felt completely whole. The months leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of activity. Liam and I decided on a garden wedding, wanting something intimate and filled with nature's beauty. We chose a venue with sprawling greenery, colorful flowers, and a gazebo that looked like it was straight out of a fairy tale. My best friends, Tara and Amaka, helped me with every detail, from choosing the perfect dress to picking out floral arrangements. My dress was a flowing, lace gown that made me feel like the queen Liam always said I was. Liam, ever the romantic, was deeply involved in the planning too. "I want this day to be as perfect as you are," he'd say with a grin. We decided to incorporate elements from both our cultures. My family brought in vibrant African traditions, while Liam's family introduced elegant touches from their Irish heritage. The result was a beautiful fusion that felt like a celebration of not just our love, but the joining of two families and two worlds. The morning of the wedding was a mix of nerves and excitement. As I sat in the bridal suite, surrounded by my closest friends and family, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. From heartbreaks and self-doubt to this moment of pure joy, it felt like everything had led me to this day. When it was time to walk down the aisle, my heart raced. The music began, and I stepped out, arm in arm with my father. The sight before me took my breath away. Liam stood at the end of the aisle, looking as handsome as ever in a tailored navy blue suit. His eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, it felt like the world faded away. It was just him and me, as it always had been. As I reached him, he whispered, "You're stunning, and you're my everything," I replied, my voice trembling with emotion. The officiant spoke of love, commitment, and the strength it takes to build a life together. Liam and I exchanged heartfelt vows, promising to stand by each other through every joy and challenge. "I promise to love you for who you are, not just who you might become," Liam said, his voice steady. "You've taught me to see the beauty in vulnerability, and I will cherish you always." I took a deep breath, my hands trembling slightly as I began. "Liam, you've shown me what it means to be truly loved, not for how I look, but for who I am. You've healed parts of me I thought were broken forever. I promise to love, honor, and cherish you, always." By the time we exchanged rings, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, Liam pulled me into a kiss that was filled with every ounce of love we had for each other. The reception was a lively, joyous affair. Guests danced to Afrobeat and Irish folk music, blending cultures and creating memories that would last a lifetime. Liam and I shared our first dance under the stars, the fairy lights twinkling above us. "I can't believe you're my wife," Liam said, holding me close. "And I can't believe you're my husband," I replied, laughing softly. "We're stuck with each other now. Forever," he said, his voice filled with certainty. As the night drew to a close, I looked around at the faces of everyone who loved and supported us. My heart felt full, my soul at peace. Liam and I had found each other in the most unexpected way, but our love was the kind that defied odds and healed wounds. As we drove away into the night, hand in hand, I knew our journey was just beginning. And for the first time, I felt ready to face the future together. If you enjoyed this story and would like to see more stories like this, don't forget to click on the subscribe button and like this video. Thanks, see you next time.